rear drum shoes, wheel cylinder, hub, springs, and all. What we're going to replace are the wheel cylinders, because I think I still got a good bit of pad. It stops pretty much well. It's just I'm losing fluid, and it looks like, from the way it looks, I'm losing power in the wheel cylinders and losing a little bit of fluid from them as well. The other side looks about this way as well. And these weren't adjusted the last time I looked at them. They were awful. But since then, brakes have worked a little bit better. Fluid's gone down still. So, I'm only going to replace the wheel cylinders. And I'm going to show you all step by step how I do that. So, let's see, first I'm going to want to take the tension off. This is holding your tension wheel, and that's what pushes it out. The springs, that's what holds it together. And you've got the ones that hold them on. And then you have one more underneath. It's usually just one spring. But they're pretty tight, so you want to loosen the tension by spinning that wheel right at my fingernail, by pulling this back and then spinning that to where it's all the way back, and then most of this should get loose.
First, pull back the retaining clip that's on the adjuster nut and adjust it to where all the tension is gone. Next, push in the retainer spring and spin the pin that's in the back 90 degrees or until it pops out. With that now loose, you are now able to pull your large spring from the top from the left side. Now you're ready to slide out your wheel cylinder and replace it with the new one. Remember to reinstall the adjuster assembly back in place properly and using the other side as a good reference.
Everything back together, new wheel cylinder, everything straight. What I was talking about before with that spring that goes, there's a hole right underneath the holders, and that spring comes to here, goes over here. Try not to pop it off, but if you do pop it off, you can pretty much take this whole side, disconnect that. All this will kind of fall here, and just slide it off, reset this. Remember, when you go to put that back together, the tensioner goes in front of it. Yeah, there's a little tab that slides right behind it. Make sure the tensioner goes in those two slots that go side to side. Now, if you need to know how to take this large spring off, do like I do and get a set of vice needle nose. I grab like right about here, and this side is the one that comes off easier. So just pull this way, and there's a very tiny hole in there. But once you get that back in place, oh yeah, and don't forget that spring underneath has to go back in a certain guide area. So before you start pulling things apart, look at it first. So yeah, and there's the drum. Scuffed everything out. Same thing with the shoes. I cleaned them, scuffed them, and it's ready for reassembly. So basically you do the same thing with the other side, and then you're ready for bleeding. Make sure you bleed them, because if you don't bleed them, you'll lose pedal and you're screwed. So find a good buddy to pump the brakes and to bleed them out. Rebleeder. And usually they'll give you a new little cap. That's a 10mm. Usually you want to get a wrench with box end on one side or closed in. And if you're having a hard time breaking it loose, do not strip it. Use a socket. So, a couple tools I've been using. Hammer to tap it away. Got the 10mm, got that. 15. Something to turn the wheel for the tension. Brake cleaner. Scuff pad. And it helps to have something to sit on. So we also are going to be replacing the distributor and the distributor button. It's back underneath all of that. It's pretty easy. Yeah, there's a lot of light. Makes a nice little tray. You can actually pull this whole thing right out. Yeah. Heater hose. Straight up. Alright. See? Right there. So what I'm going to do is label them wires. I already got something to label them with. And pretty sure it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm just going to label it that way and label it on the distributor itself. So I mapped out which wires are which, and then I put on the new distributor cap which ones go where. Oh, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that's usually the hard part if you don't transfer anything over. I should be able to pop all the wires off without having to worry about mixing them up. Throw the new cap on, not forgetting the distributor button. And then fire it up, see how she goes. And then next step, I'll take them all out, all the spark plugs, clean them off, and then hopefully next time there'll be wires and plugs. We're fixing this stuff so we can get just a little bit more out of the truck until we do our next big thing, such as tires, brakes, or just anything in general. You see that I had to deal with that with the distributor button. This is what a new one looks like on the inside. There's the old one. I had to literally break it off, and I used a pick here, and there is a spot on there where it guides right in here. So I also had to break it out of there. Other than that, That should just slide right on. New grease, new distributor button, got your old one. The points in there, they were pretty much corroded, so I was losing power a good bit, plus it was stuttering. That and the fact that those wires weren't connected too well. When replacing the distributor button, remember, get some WD-40. Scrub the pin, get a wire brush, scrub the pin, lube both of them up with WD-40 and slide it on. Do not tap it on with anything. Do not break it. Because I noticed it was a little bit more difficult than I was expecting, but I lubed them both up and it popped on just fine. Distributor cap and distributor buttons back on. Everything is reconnected. Put your air filter case back on. Don't forget about your heater hose underneath, right here. And start it up. If there's any odd noises, cut her off. Everything's back on, clean and ready to go.